In 1834, a royal physician in Madrid was ordered to perform a task so bizarre. His notes were locked away in the Vatican for 200 years. What he saw would redefine everything we know about Spain's most hated king. Imagine walking those silent halls, the air thick with incense and fear. A dead king lies under silk sheets. But the horror isn't his face. It's what lies beneath. Why was this king so feared? What was so grotesque, so unspeakable, that history tried to erase it? To understand Ferdinand VII, you have to start before his first breath. He wasn't just born into power. He was born into a curse. Spain's royal bloodline wasn't just blue. It was poisoned. Centuries of cousin marrying cousin, uncle marrying niece, generation after generation, of keeping the throne pure, until the line became anything but. By 1784, the Spanish Bourbons and Habsburgs had created a genetic nightmare. Their heirs were pale and sickly, their jaws too large, their bodies prone to disease. Some were said to be half-mad. And then came Ferdinand, October 14, 1784. El Escorial Palace. A boy who would grow to rule a kingdom, but who was born already broken. His parents, Charles IV and Maria Luisa of Parma, were first cousins, a match meant to strengthen dynasties. But all it did was twist the bloodline even tighter. From the start, whispers followed the young prince. Whispers that nature had played a cruel joke, that his body, even in childhood, was different. They described a royal body that defied medical understanding, a body that would haunt his wives and his entire kingdom. He grew up surrounded by mockery. Servants giggled behind closed doors. Courtiers whispered in corridors. And Ferdinand learned one thing early on. The world was laughing at him. That laughter would turn him cruel. That cruelty would shape a reign. And Spain would bleed for it. Adolescence should have made Ferdinand stronger. But every year, the shame grew with him. His body had already made him a curiosity. But now, as his anatomy developed in ways no physician could explain, the whispers turned into ridicule. Behind closed doors, the palace staff spoke of the royal deformity, mocking what they would never dare say aloud. Foreign diplomats reported his strangeness back to their kings. And Ferdinand heard everything. Mockery is a strange poison. It doesn't kill you quickly. It rots you from the inside out. Ferdinand's father, King Charles IV, was a weak man, more interested in hunting than ruling. His mother, Maria Luisa of Parma, openly flaunted her affair with Manuel de Godoy, the real power behind the Spanish throne. The young prince absorbed these lessons. Lessons about betrayal, about humiliation, about the weakness of trust. But it was his own body, his own secret shame, that truly shaped him. By 15, court physicians were already taking measurements, scribbling secret notes that would never be read by the public. One described him bluntly. The prince's condition is such that normal intimacy may prove impossible. Another was crueler. It resembles a weapon, not a human organ. Imagine hearing those words about yourself, again and again, from men too frightened to meet your eyes. Ferdinand began to see mockery everywhere, in the bows of his servants, in the fake smiles of potential brides, in the polite, careful tone of his tutors. To him, everyone was laughing, and some of them actually were. By 17, he was no longer just humiliated. He was dangerous. When a servant caught a glimpse of him, he didn't just dismiss the boy. He had him flogged, then exiled with his family. This was the message Ferdinand sent to everyone. No one could witness his shame and survive unpunished. Every secret, every humiliation, was feeding something dark inside him. A need to control. A need to punish. A need to prove he was still a king, even if nature itself had mocked him. This shame, this paranoia, would follow him into his marriage bed, and the women of Spain's royal court would pay the price. If you've made it this far, you're already braver than most. What's your take? Do you think shame and power create tyrants, or was Ferdinand simply born cursed? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let me know which hidden historical figures you'd like me to uncover next. Ferdinand VII was not just a king. He was a curse that walked in royal robes. And for his brides, marriage was less a union of hearts, and more a war of survival. In 1802, Ferdinand married his first cousin, Princess Maria Antonia of Naples and Sicily. She was just 17, a bright, intelligent girl, with romantic notions of what life as a queen would bring. She thought she was marrying a prince, called El Deseado, the desired one. But she had no idea how cruelly reality would break her. The wedding night was not a night of passion. It was a night of horror. Ferdinand's valet delivered an unusual list of requests. Special preparations, he called them. Pillows, supports, oils, things more suited for surgery than for romance. When Ferdinand entered the room, Maria Antonia's innocent heart stopped. She screamed, as though she had seen a monster. One lady-in-waiting would later write, "Her Majesty cried, 'Monster! Monster!' until her voice broke." What she saw that night was something no bride is prepared for. A body so misshapen, so alien in its proportions, that fear replaced any thought of love. That wedding night wasn't an act of intimacy. It was a medical procedure. Maria Antonia was dosed with laudanum, just to endure her husband's touch. The king's physicians hovered, adjusting the royal cushions and supports, like engineers fine-tuning a machine. There was no romance, only fear, pain, and the heavy silence of duty. As months passed, the royal couple's attempts to conceive an heir turned into a ritualized nightmare. Maria Antonia was treated like an object, a body to be prepared, drugged, positioned, and left broken. Every failure, every miscarriage, only made Ferdinand crueler. His paranoia convinced him that Maria Antonia was deliberately sabotaging his attempts to produce an heir. He accused her of being cursed, of being barren, even of committing acts of treason, simply because she recoiled from his touch. By 1807, the young queen was addicted to laudanum. Her body trembled, her mind slipped into darkness, and when she died at just 21, the official record read, "fever and a weak constitution." But the truth? She died of despair, crushed under the weight of a marriage that was more torture than union. Ferdinand showed little grief. Within weeks, he was already searching for another wife, another victim, who could give him the heir he so desperately desired. And this time, he would bring not just cruelty, but a paranoia so poisonous, it would infect the entire Spanish court. By the time Maria Antonia was buried, Ferdinand's mind was already fixed on one thing: an heir. Spain's future depended on it. And for Ferdinand, it became an obsession, a sickness. Marriage wasn't about love. It was about duty, and the continuation of a cursed bloodline. So in 1816, he married again. Maria Isabel of Portugal. Another cousin. Another innocent girl, with no idea what awaited her. The palace physicians, still haunted by Maria Antonia's screams, prepared for the new queen. This time, they promised the king things would be different. They built what they called marital aids. But they looked more like instruments of torture. Cushions to hold Ferdinand's grotesque anatomy in place. Silk and leather restraints to keep his wife from pulling away. Even glass tubes and oils to reduce the pain. Maria Isabel never had a chance. Her first night with Ferdinand was less a consummation and more a battle. Witnesses spoke of screams so piercing they echoed through the palace walls. Blood stained the sheets. Furniture was broken. And by morning, the new queen was trembling like a prisoner of war. From that night forward, Maria Isabel was never the same. She stuttered when Ferdinand entered the room. She flinched at his touch. At night, she would wake screaming, whispering to her ladies, "The monster is coming." But for Ferdinand, her fear wasn't enough. He wanted results. A son, a future king. And when nature refused to obey, he turned to darker methods. Alchemists were brought to court. Mystics, too. They burned incense and recited chants, promising that the stars would bless his bed. Ferdinand timed his attempts. By the moon, by omens, by rituals whispered in secret chambers. He spent fortunes on potions and powders, crushed pearls, ground rhinoceros horn, rare herbs said to restore male balance. But nothing worked, and with every failure, his rage deepened. Maria Isabel wasn't just a wife anymore. She was a vessel, and when she failed to give him a child, he began to see her as an enemy, a traitor to the crown. By 1818, after just 2 years of this nightmare, Maria Isabel was dead. The official record said, nervous exhaustion. But palace servants whispered the truth. She had died trying to escape him. 2 wives were gone, 2 women destroyed, and Ferdinand still had no heir, no son, no future. So he turned again to medicine and madness. His third marriage would push the Spanish court into a nightmare darker than anything it had seen before. 2 queens gone, 2 lives shattered, all in the name of a throne. Would you survive a palace like this? Tell me below. Could you endure what these women faced? If you're still watching, you're one of us, a seeker of dark truths. Hit like so I know you're here, and subscribe to unlock more stories that history tried to erase. By the time Ferdinand married for the 3rd time, his reputation preceded him. Maria Josepha of Saxony, a 24-year-old princess, educated and gentle, knew the stories. She had read the reports of the first 2 queens. She had heard the whispers of blood and screams. But the marriage had to happen. Spain needed stability, and Ferdinand needed an heir. At any cost. Maria Josepha came prepared. She brought her own physician, her own collection of remedies and devices, and an almost clinical resolve. This wasn't romance. This was survival. The palace workshops, by now infamous among the servants, looked more like torture chambers than artisan studios. There were steel supports, leather straps, silk bindings, and contraptions so bizarre that even the craftsmen refused to speak of them. Maria Josepha endured her wedding night with the composure of a soldier on the battlefield. She followed the instructions of physicians and midwives, who treated intimacy like surgery. Every session was meticulously timed, measured, and recorded. She kept her own journal. Every attempt was documented. Every injury, every failure, every bruise she had to hide beneath layers of silk. One entry read, "It is not love. It is pain, arranged by protocol." But Ferdinand wasn't satisfied. As months passed without a pregnancy, his paranoia sharpened into something crueler. He accused Maria Josepha of secretly sabotaging him, of poisoning herself, of conspiring with foreign powers to humiliate the Spanish throne. Every corner of the palace became a laboratory of madness. Ferdinand invited foreign experts to observe their bedchamber, turning his private life into a grotesque medical theater. German anatomists, French physicians, even circus performers who claimed anatomical expertise. They all came to watch, to take notes, to sketch. For Maria Josepha, this wasn't marriage. It was public humiliation. She stopped eating. Her body grew frail. Her eyes stared blankly, as though she were already halfway gone. But then, in 1829, something miraculous, or cruel, happened. Maria Josepha became pregnant. The Spanish court erupted with joy. At last, an heir was coming. Ferdinand's obsession only deepened. He brought in the best physicians from across Europe, hired guards to protect her, even had priests bless her chambers daily. Every hour, the pregnancy was monitored like a royal treasure. But in the 7th month, something went wrong. Maria Josepha went into early labor. The child, a baby girl, lived only a few hours. Maria Josepha, weak and infected, followed her child into the grave 3 weeks later. For Ferdinand, this wasn't just a tragedy. It was proof, in his mind, that the universe itself was mocking him. 3 wives, 3 deaths, and still, Spain had no heir. What Ferdinand did next would push the Spanish court into the depths of paranoia, where shadows, betrayal, and madness became the true rulers of the palace. By 1829, Ferdinand VII was a widower 3 times over. 3 brides had been buried, their lives consumed by his obsession for an heir. But the Spanish throne was crumbling. Revolutions stirred in the colonies. The crown needed a successor, and Ferdinand needed one final wife. Enter Maria Christina of Naples. Young, smart, politically useful. But Maria Christina carried a secret. She was already pregnant by another man. When she arrived in Madrid, Ferdinand didn't care. After decades of humiliation, this was his chance to rewrite history. If the child could be passed off as his, the bloodline would survive. His curse would remain hidden. When Isabella II was born in 1830, the court celebrated. Spain finally had an heir. But Ferdinand knew the truth, and it haunted him. He adored Isabella, but he also resented her. Every time he looked at the child, he saw proof of his own failure. His body's betrayal made flesh. Ferdinand's paranoia exploded. He became obsessed with Maria Christina's every move. Every letter she wrote, every look she gave another man, was treated as evidence of treason. He ordered the construction of secret passageways through the royal palace, allowing him to spy on his wife without being seen. Peepholes drilled in walls, mirrors placed at angles to catch her reflection, guards stationed outside her door, with orders to report her every word. At night, he would stand silently in the dark, just watching her, sometimes while she prayed, sometimes while she nursed their daughter, sometimes just breathing. Food tasting became a ritual of paranoia. Every meal was delayed for hours, while tasters waited 30 minutes after each bite, to ensure no slow poison had been used. Some tasters collapsed under the pressure, and Ferdinand took this as proof that someone was always trying to kill him. Maria Christina's letters to her family in Naples speak of a life lived under glass. "I am watched," she wrote. "Even when I sleep, I feel his eyes on me." The palace, once a place of royal grandeur, had turned into a prison, a stage for Ferdinand's madness. And as his paranoia consumed him, Spain itself began to rot. Revolts ignited across the empire. Colonies broke away, and the king who called himself El Deseado, the desired one, was becoming the most despised man in Europe. Does absolute power create monsters, or just reveal them? Tell me in the comments what you think. I read every single one, and trust me, your thoughts spark the next stories I tell. By 1833, the king who had ruled through fear, paranoia, and pain was fading. Ferdinand VII, El Deseado, was now a ghost in his own palace. Years of physical deformity, failed medical experiments, and relentless obsession had broken him. His hands shook, his speech slurred, and his mind once consumed by cruelty, was now tangled in delirium. In his final days, he called out for his dead wives, Maria Antonia, Maria Isabel, Maria Josepha, as if begging for forgiveness from the very women he had destroyed. On September 29, 1833, Ferdinand VII finally died. The official cause? Gout. The truth? Exhaustion of body, mind, and soul. But death didn't end the horror. The royal physicians were given one last, secret order. Examine the king's body. Preserve his secret. What they found confirmed every whispered story. 14 inches. Distorted. Scarred. A grotesque testament to a lifetime of suffering. Those notes, and the king's preserved organ, were locked away in the Vatican archives, hidden from the world for nearly 2 centuries. But Ferdinand's legacy wasn't locked away. Spain was left broken, its colonies lost, its economy in ruins, its people scarred by decades of tyranny. He was called the Desired One, but his reign was anything but desired. His life was a cautionary tale of power twisted by shame, and of a king whose body was as deformed as the empire he left behind. They buried the man, but the curse of Ferdinand VII still lingers in the ruins of Spain's forgotten past.